Sound, a group of vibrations, things that can be heard. Sound can influence the way we communicate in the world with.
From the beginner to the master, from the novice to the professional, from playing, experimenting with things to create a masterpiece. These are all elements of art. And on this show, our art is sound. Hi, I'm L.V. Smith, host of the show Sounds Within. Today, it's not often that I get to have a person of a higher order of thinking, and we tend to cringe when we hear that term, higher order. Well, folks, we can't just muddle along on the same subjects and same paradoxes and dogma. It's time to step up and explore new realms of thinking. So today, I am proud to have a dear friend I met on Facebook, Mr. Todd Vickers, author. Welcome to the Sounds Within. I am so glad you came.
Thank you, LV.
I'm seriously, I mean, like, there's a lot of things about, media, what do you call social media, and you can get lost, but then you can really meet some interesting people and truly deep thinkers like you. So I am so humbled that you are here.
Well, I hope I can live up to that. Let's see.
You lived up to it by showing up. So let's get down to nitty gritty. Now I'm going to begin with my usual favorite question. What makes Todd Todd?
Well, this Todd that has this name has been changing ever since I first started to be able to conceive of him. And but what makes Todd Todd, what makes Todd different is I know that the distance between what I think about myself and who I am is pretty much the same distance between the pizza that we think about and the pizza we can eat.
Hey, that's good, that's good. Okay, I'm going to get to my favorite question. What was the very first sound you ever remembered hearing?
I think crying.
Why do you say that?
I think it was my own crying. And I think I remember that sound. That's as close as I can get, my friend.
That is great and original. Now we're going to move on to another question, a little deeper. Now, we know that you're an author. What was the very first sound that motivated you to become a writer?
I think the failure of beliefs, and the failure of beliefs that led to grief.
So what sound was that?
Grief. The
Sound
of sadness.
grief. Wow. Woo! I thought I was going to hear something like silence or something, but grief, that's horrible.
No, the silence is a big part of this, but yeah, I think it was what motivated me.
Yes.
The sounds of human suffering, yeah.
That's deep. Now, so that motivated you to become a writer. So what do you write about for now?
Well, the motivation, I began writing after being a seeker for several years, and I started very young, having worked through some destructive habits and then not knowing what to do with myself.
So how old were you when you discovered you were a seeker?
I would say probably about 16. So that's when I really started looking at what people were offering as better ideas, better ways to do things, spiritual thinking, different writers. And but what motivated me to start writing is there's a whole lot of nonsense in the world and in that particular world. And even though there are some gems, oftentimes those gems are hidden. And what it's hidden in can even be harmful sometimes, particularly if people are relying on something that's unreliable.
What do you mean when you say people are relying on something that is unreliable?
Well, let's take a look. Something that's quite popular nowadays is what I like to call abundance mythology. This idea that if you give, that you will get back. And if you look at the law of reciprocity, there's even a formula for it, 10%. Now there's a lot of people who've given an awful lot, and that may be worth doing for another reason. But this idea that we're going to get something back, and that's circumstantial. And I've seen some people who were doing quite well and happened to believe this, have circumstance change on them. Mm-hmm. And they kept giving, and they kept giving, and they kept giving, and they drove themselves out of business. Now they were by nature generous people, but they also believed this, and they were giving to their spiritual advisors who they thought were really responsible for their success, when in fact that was very situational.
Now, your current book is The Relevance of Kabir, right?
Yes.
By Todd Vickers. And I haven't read anything deep for quite some time because of work or whatever. So when I was checking you out on Facebook, and I said, gosh, this guy I'm talking to is an author, he writes. So I said, let's check out his book. And I found Kabir to be so fascinating. Would you tell the audience what Kabir was or is all about?
Well, the short version is Kabir was a 15th century poet and philosopher.
So he was a real person?
He was a real person, historical person. And he's known for his very bold writings. Kabir was born into a very religious world in India, and he left two religions behind. He was certainly capable of criticizing both religions.
So he was very critical of the faiths he was into.
Well, and he looked around and he saw what people were doing and saw the weaknesses and didn't accept the explanations. And, it was very challenging if somebody would say, well, the Ganga can wash away all our sins, and him being of the lowest caste, as Sudra.
All right, so in India they had a caste system there.
Yeah, and so he would took one of his bowls and dipped it in the Ganges and handed it to the highest caste, which of course would never touch it.
Right.
And he's like, you're saying that this will purify people's souls, but it can't clean this bowl? So now, he paid the price for that too. I mean, he was beaten. He noticed that if he lied, people loved him. And if he told the truth, they would beat him. So he took great risk. And part of my love for Kabir is the affection I have for all those people who contribute to humanity by being willing to risk, take the next step that, those people who dared to think, well, what can these slaves do if they weren't put into that place? What might women do if we taught them something? Somebody has to be the first one to think that, and they're an extreme minority.
Now, go ahead.
Yeah, so.
That is so bold. And I understand you may make videos and speeches of this. And do you have any videos you would recommend for us to learn about Kabir?
Yeah, there's a couple of videos where I mentioned Kabir. They're at vivriti.org.
Okay.
If anybody wants to go to the website, on the navigation, you can go to the Vivriti channel at YouTube. And there's 20 short videos, and I talk about meditation and progress and Kabir.
Great. Let's go watch one of these videos right now.
So he caused a great deal of trouble for himself, being that rebellious or courageous, I would say.
Yeah, I think that's being a lover of truth. The other thing about Kabir, there's, humility is a word that's often misused. But even Kabir says in some of his poems, if you can resolve this, then you're my master, because he runs into paradoxes that he doesn't quite know how to solve. And he gives all his insight, and then he leaves it up to the hearer. When we look at the difficulties that arise out of people's beliefs, we see today a clash of beliefs. Some people call it a clash of civilizations. But so oftentimes, what people seek in their beliefs is security for their ideas of themselves. They don't know that these things are just ideas. Had they been born in another country or in another time, they would have an entirely different set of ideas.
Hi, I'm L.V. Smith, host of the show Sounds Within, which comes on every Friday, 8:30 a.m. and 8:30 p.m. When I'm not producing that show, I like to watch James Jones Jr.'s show, which is called Anybody Can Play Guitar, which comes on Fridays at 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. See you then. Hey, it's L.V. Smith of Sounds Within. Our guest today is Todd Vickers, extraordinary author with very deep thoughts, which really dig deep into the human psyche. And Todd, thanks for coming here. And we just saw a little clip on your talks about Kabir. Now, I was really fascinated on a couple of subjects. There were so many subjects, because the minute I get on your poetry, or I should say Kabir's poetry, I just said, wow, this is deep, but then it's comprehensible, and it really does force me to really look deep within myself, and yes, it does cast a critical eye. Not the saying that I should abandon my faith, but it makes me more like, what does it really mean? How is this really true, and how is it, somehow I feel uncomfortable with believing the so-called dogma of things. So would you explain to us or the audience about Kabir there, about where does he play when he talks about, let's say, a subject like meditation?
Well, typically when we talk about meditation, people are usually teaching some technique, and all the techniques have one thing in common. They arrest our typical habits of mind. Whether it's doing something else specifically or just simply quieting the mind and entering into the silence. So you could say one would be a concentration type of technique. Some may be body-centered. Others are just completely letting go. But the thing about meditation and what it exposes to us is our ideas about ourselves and about the world, and they're coming and going in our consciousness. And these ideas, would be kind of like, the fingers that we hold into space. But those things are always coming and going, including our experiences, even spiritual experiences, which can get very touchy.
Yes, they can be.
But if anything has a beginning, it also has an end. So these experiences are coming and going. So it's like I say, I hold up my hand and you look at the fingers, but what we don't see is the space between the fingers.
Right.
And look, still there.
Right.
And it's that aspect of self-inquiry. What is it within us that all these experiences, including our thoughts and our beliefs, are coming and going within? When we believe something, it was present. It was also present when we found out it wasn't true. What's that? This aspect of life that we call awareness, some people call consciousness, very difficult to define. But meditation is an inquiry into that. But one of the consequences of arresting habits of mind is because you could say that our life force is typically absorbed in the way we think and do things. When we stop doing that, that life force starts doing other things. And we call those other things altered states. Wow. We experience ourselves in a wholly different way. And I think this is a wonderful aspect of meditation because it shows us that there's more to the world than how we habitually experience it. The problem is people interpret what those states mean. And depending on which teacher you're talking to, you will get a very different, someone might call it the Holy Spirit. Someone might call it being possessed. Someone might call it Shakti. Someone might call it Chi. Someone might call it Prana. But what we really know is we're not doing what we normally do, and obviously we experience ourselves in a whole different way.
True. And a lot of people try to use meditation to make a change because they're going through something or they're facing an adversity which makes them feel uncomfortable and it's hard to conquer. And I remember something said about in order to make a change, you have to break a habit.
Well, that we can't make a habit of breaking habits. That if we want to break a habit, we have to do it consciously. And a habit of mind could be something, as simple as, opening the door with the dominant hand. You're not going to habitually break that habit. If you want to change that, you're going to have to think about it. Well, let's say if you happen to be born a racist and into a racist environment, and you realize that it's nonsense, how do you break the habit, though? You have to consciously change it. Because if you surrender to your habits, it's gotcha. So the habit could be chauvinism, it could be smoking. If you want to quit smoking, the part where you actually don't smoke is more tricky than people. I used to smoke. I used to smoke 3 packs a day.
Really?
And I was a lightweight compared to my father and my mother. I came out the chute a smoker. So, but the thing is that, I would, look at the ashtray and know that I emptied it in the morning. And have 25 cigarettes in there and maybe remember smoking 6, 7, and nobody else was in the house. I smoked habitually. I didn't have to think about it to do it. Just like you don't have to think about tying your shoes or chewing gum. If you're going to break something like that, whether you exchange it in for a better habit or just stop it altogether, it's going to take a conscious choice. And meditation is a conscious choice to arrest your habits of mind.
And there's various styles of meditation, be it like the popular one today, at least in our realm, is yoga. In some parts of Asia, is Tai Chi, and then in indigenous Americas, we have the sweat lodges or spiritual chants and whatever those realms may be. So they kind of play a part in adjusting. Are they pretty much a sincere way of dealing with dogma or a challenge or adversity?
Well, one of the difficulties is let's say we do, it doesn't matter what we do some kind of technique that somebody offers us when we experience ourselves in a whole new way. That may very well just be a consequence of arresting our ordinary habits. What we have a tendency to do is to associate that new experience with other things that are being taught, which may be true or false. So if someone, say for example, does some spiritual practice and they find some relief from their habits of mind and they're not suffering like they used to, it doesn't really matter what's being taught. They will have a tendency to apply the credit for that new experience to the belief when maybe it just had to do with arresting their habits is why they experience themselves in a whole new way.
Wow.
Not because the belief is true.
Yes, and I hear you have a talk about meditation that is in a video format.
Yeah, I talk about some of these very things, the pros and cons of meditation, because there's a lot of pros.
Well, let's look at one of those videos right now.
We can look at meditation in 2 ways. We can look at it as inquiry into what we can experience. In other words, the altered states that we can create when we're meditating using some technique. Or quieting the mind. And it's very easy for a spiritual seeker to become fascinated with the experiences that come and go in meditation, because they're so different from our typical or habitual states of mind. I'm not against altered states in any way. In fact, I think they're very important. They let us know that there are other experiences that exist beyond what we've experienced in the past.
Hi, this is L.V. Smith, host of the show Sounds Within, which comes on Fridays, 8:30 a.m. and 8:30 p.m. When I'm not producing that show, I like to watch Dan Nicewander's show called The Now Men Show, Thursdays at 8 a.m. and 8 p.m.
Hi, L.V. Smith of the show Sounds Within, where we deal with sound. Today we have Todd Vickers, extraordinary author, talking about meditation, his writings about the relevance of Kabir. And now I understand you're part of an organization that's sending you to India. Would you tell us about that?
Well, it's called vivriti.org, Vivriti, and Vivriti means discovery in Sanskrit. One of my dear friends who met me through my second book, actually, a dear friend named Chandra Kotaru, he has always been a supporter of my work.
Wow.
And wanted to help create some kind of mechanism for me to spread the word. And so he came up with this idea of creating an organization. And we already have 20 videos up online that people can access the channel, and those are free. And so there's going to be a lot of stuff that's available to the public so they can explore it. And then also Vivriti gives away some of my books to universities and libraries. So it was really a wonderful idea and a wonderful gift from my friend. And I'm very happy to be involved with it. And so I was in India for 2 months earlier this year, giving talks. And I will probably be going back this September. That's the plan.
Wow, so what's going to be happening over there this time in India?
Well, we're going to do a little bit of video production from the last time I was there. There's a couple of university talks that are planned that I'm excited about. And then also promoting the book. I mean, hopefully one day.
And the book you're promoting is?
The Relevance of Kabir.
Oh, yes. I cannot get enough of that, like I said before. I was having a few little things where demons of the past were biting me. And so when I started reading your book, and it just says, well, let's be critical on this part here. It said, are you there now? I'm like, no, but the memory's still there. So it's like I'm surrendering back to the past to go to the past, and I realize I'm not happy there. So if I want to be happy, I have to just say, hey, it's water under a bridge, as they say today, or our area says it, but it's tied so much to Kabir, and I noticed that I'm going through that healing process there, and it's really helped me a lot.
Well, I'm very pleased to hear that. You know, one of the things about the human mind is it's immensely powerful in terms of abstraction. We conceive of things, but it's not like our mind communicates to our body in language. It communicates to our body in impulses. We feel what we think. If you're falling in a dream to your death, that's real fear. But that's not what's happening. It's taking place in the mind. And it's one of the reasons why we need to question what we're feeling, because, there's the part where, I stub my toe and I have an emotional response to that. But that's a response to an actual event where if I stub my toe and I'm like, why does this always happen to me? I start telling some story about poor me and, what are the gods against me or whatever. We start coming up with explaining the things of our life by a fictitious narrative.
And that plays a lot with death too, doesn't it?
Yeah, and our body's got to go through the emotion of that thinking. It's kind of like, you can buy a ticket to a horror movie to feel that, or you can sit and watch it going on in your mind.
Or read the news.
Yeah, and the fiction can also be joyful too.
Yes,
it can be very pleasant.
Oh yes.
Anybody who's ever been disillusioned, from elation to crash because some fact revealed something we believed was untrue. We can see the power of the mind to make us feel anything. So, and again, meditation touches on quieting the mind and then becoming aware of the limitations of that mind. Not only its limitations, but its immense power too.
And so that's what you're going to be discussing on your tour to India?
Yeah, why Kabir is relevant today. Because, even though we look at the past and we see some of the mistakes that our ancestors made and we think, oh my God, how could they believe that? But I don't believe our ancestors' power to conceive was any way weaker than ours. I think our superstitions have become more sophisticated.
I have to agree. So, you going to be having any new writing projects you want to be working on?
Oh, plenty. I've just finished rewriting my first book, The Paradox of Self-Realization. I wrote 18 years ago. And I was a newbie writer, and I made every mistake you're not supposed to make, and I thought it deserved to be written better. And I'm trying my hand at a little bit of fiction. The fiction work is basically about taking real life stories and putting it in the mouth of men who are collected at a beach house for a weekend.
So you're going to take real experiences and make it fictional.
Yeah, and putting into the mouths of fictional characters, and basically the topic's all going to revolve around women.
Okay.
And they don't agree with each other.
No, they don't.
So I'm in the middle of that project now. I'm excited about it, and but anytime all those stories can be told in one place, I think it's going to be good.
Great. Now we have this demon. Yes, it's a demon called time. So you're going to have your camera over there talking to you, or you're actually going to be talking to it. So, what words of wisdom do you have to offer to future Todd Vickers to become great authors like yourself?
Don't be limited to anything I say. The way life is supposed to work is it's supposed to get better over time. That we forsake what we see is not adapted to the real world, and we build on what has value.
Wow. That's powerful. How can the audience get in contact with you and obtain information of your writings or talks again?
Vivriti.org would probably be the best way. There's a contact page on the website, and there's access to blog posts, and they can access the book and the free videos there, and from there they can take it and go wherever they want with it.
I love it. Todd Vickers, extraordinary author. Welcome, and thanks
Thank
for
you
coming
so
to Sounds
much.
Within. Please come back again so we can explore
thank you.
deeper realms where you're going. I'm enjoying this, and I do want you back.
Oh, you count on it.
Oh, yes. Trust me, I'll be looking for you. Folks, this is L.V. Smith, host of the show Sounds Within, with the best crew at Pasadena Media. Thank you all. So do tune back in again, and we look forward to seeing you, and I wish you all a great being in life. Peace.
Well, unnecessary suffering is suffering that we create. And we create it based upon ideas in our mind. It's a consequence of this human ability we have to conceive so well. We can think something and then experience a feeling based upon it. Its value is that, we can anticipate, for example, if we saw someone being eaten by a bear, and then some other day we see a bear, we can anticipate that bear eating us by imagining ourselves in that circumstance. And this way it gives us a chance to play out in our mind what would happen if that bear got a hold of us, and we can scare ourselves. We can anticipate about a bear even when there's no bear and still feel the fear. In the same way that we can feel fear watching a horror movie. It's not real, but we feel it. And we know it's not real, but our bodies are innocent. It just follows the narrative. So, if you are falling to your death in a dream, it feels like you're going to die. And then you wake up and realize this idea of self that you had in your mind is not who you are. And it's like, oh, what a relief.
Hi, I'm L.V. Smith, host of the show Sounds Within, which comes on Fridays, 8:30 a.m. and 8:30 p.m. Hey, be sure you tune in and watch Thursday Night Live with Jeff Hodge, Thursday at 10 p.m. See you then.
Hey, I'm James.
Hi, I'm Aaron.
Hi, I'm Anna.
I'm Jasper.
And together we're Anna Lee and the Authorities. Come check out L.V. Smith's show on The
Sounds Within.